I mean, Alex, what do you think about the whole debate? Just putting aside like how nasty it got, but just the tech industry
Yeah.
versus tech, because you and I have been at this for a while now, and the coverage is, gotten contentious.
So I listened to your Axios interview because I wanted to prep for this little show. So I want to make sure that I heard your take on this in a different environment when I wasn't taking part in the conversation, so I could just listen. And I just fundamentally don't agree with your view of the balance in tech media coverage. And just to get a feel for this, I just went to TechCrunch.com and I read all the headlines on the front page, and I went to the New York Times technology section and I read through all the headlines on the Times. I went through a couple pages of them, and you were saying like 8, 9 out of 10 are these negative, hyper negative, unfair stories, and they're not. Most of them are neutral. A couple of them pointed out some flaws. Most of them are generically positive. Like if you go read TC to pick my home territory, we're talking about what companies are doing.
Yeah, TechCrunch I would leave out of it.
Okay,
but when I look at the New York Times, and if you look at Erin Griffin or you look at Kara Swisher, and those are but two, and then
of a large team,
right? There's probably a dozen people. It's literally like 7 or 8 out of 10 in my experience.
Well, go read more reporters than them. I mean, if you're saying that,
I'm talking about the ones who wind up on the cover, and tech does deserve some things. I mean, listen, I nobody's more critical than Zuckerberg than me. I think. I mean, you've been on the pod with me enough talking about that, and so I what I would just like to see is, when you're a subject, and I used to be a journalist and do random acts of journalism on this podcast, and now I'm a subject, or my companies are subjects. The amount of times a journalist calls me to tell me about some horrible thing and get comment on it, I'm just like, is there a way, like 1 out of 4 times I can tell you about something world positive, please? And the answer is no.
Well, what's funny about this is you were talking about how people should get off. This is on the Axios podcast with Dan Primack, who I like quite a lot. How people should get on the phone, and how much of this is just on Twitter. I think a lot of the contentiousness is on Twitter, because I talk to VCs, as part of my job, all the time. I talk to founders all the time. None of this ever comes up, and I think what we have is a couple of voices on the VC side who are looking only at a subset of total media coverage. And they're conflating that with all media is, and because they are paid to be generalists and thinkers, effectively, it's kind of what a VC is, with a dose of optimism and someone else's money. They try to read into this and try to extrapolate from it, and they end up looking pretty damn silly. I mean, Balaji's ideas about how to fix journalism are laughable, and I think that it's a small fraction of VCs that are actually engaged in this discourse about the media and how it's unfair to startups, because I don't agree with them. And also, no VCs that I talk to bring this up, even when we're off the record. It's only these couple of voices on Twitter. And I don't agree with the complaints about the balance of coverage. And I don't see it.
Well, I mean, don't you think that post-Trump, more publications are picking a side, where the New York Times is a little bit more left-leaning since Trump, and, the people who pick a side do better, because people obviously will subscribe if the opinion page in the New York Times speaks to you a little bit more. And, the second they publish something from the right, and listen, I've never voted for a Republican in my life, so it's not coming from a Republican standpoint. I don't know why people think I would vote for Trump. I hate him, and I say that all the time. But, when they fired the editor of the opinion page, it's giving the sense that, like, it's a left-leaning publication that maybe is anti-capitalist. It feels anti-capitalist to me.
I can't agree with really any of that. I think the Times has bent over backwards to avoid calling Trump racist, to avoid annoying the kind of bad faith media attacks from the American right. So I'm not going to give any play to that. I find it ridiculous. On the Bennett Times editorial page, I think let's keep the line between the editorial section and the rest of the paper. And he was fired for incompetence, not for a particular political perspective. So, and I don't want to spend the whole pod on this. I wasn't sure.
It's a rabbit hole we're gonna go down.
But I just want to point out that, like, the core element of your critique of media is the thing that I disagree with, and that's where you and I can talk about this in hopefully fair-minded voices. But I will say that it's never good to be mad on the internet, and we could all breathe a bit.